right to about here, I think.
Yeah,
Right here, I think.
just include that one parcel. Oh, yeah.
I think we're done.
Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order our regular board meeting for Monday, March 13, 2017. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Batkins?
Here.
Mr. Batanti? Here. Mr. Servil?
Here.
Mr. Tominello?
Here.
Mr. York?
Here.
Mr. Witt here. Mr. Verkast?
Here. Thank you. Next is our approval of the consent agenda, including approval of the regular board meeting minutes of February 27, 2017, approval of the bills in the amount of $721,253.62, approval of the February 2017 revenue and expenditure report, approval to amend the annual meeting calendar, moving the Employee Pension Board meeting to the third Wednesday of every other month, and approval to execute the 2017 Dust Control Program Agreement with the Department of Roads to provide 2 brine applications not to exceed $9,000. Are you looking for a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda with the bills in the amount with, $721,253.62.
Is there support?
Support.
All right. It's been moved and supported. Discussion?
I do have one question.
Yeah.
Under the fire fund, I guess it would be,
Revenue and expenditure report?
yeah, section 2. There was $2,600 for advanced cardiac life support training. Was that for the new items that we got from Zoll? Was it Zoll, or do you know what that was for?
Can you give us a page number to accomplish?
Page number, it says 205, under the fire fund.
Upper right, is there a page number in the upper
Yeah,
right?
205.
Oh, 2 of 5.
Yeah.
So that's not,
bills,
that's not revenue and
I'm
expenditure.
sorry.
It's all right.
It's about the 4th or 5th page in.
Do you see what I'm talking?
I see 2 of 5.
I'm
Alright,
just
let's
curious,
see.
was that for the new,
Okay, so
probably
that's my
ACLS.
department,
oh,
actually.
okay. Never mind.
Okay, so
Okay,
what,
Darren.
all right, so what, MTT stands for is Michigan Tax Tribunal? So.
No,
No,
he's
right here.
talking the advanced cardiac life support
Oh,
training.
I'm
That's
sorry,
That's
Okay, I
ACLS.
apologize.
right? For,
I'm sorry for the question, but I just went through this and I was looking at that today and just was wondering.
So the vendor is Dan Media.
Yeah, that is our annual ACLS, Advanced Cardiac Life Support Training, that is a required course for the paramedics to take. So it's a 2-year certification, so we're not split 50-50 in terms of expiration, so this is the bigger of the 2 years, but all 28 of us, myself included, have to every 2 years go through Advanced Cardiac Life Support Training. And I think, if memory serves me, we had about, I want to say maybe 17 members go through it this year.
Okay, I was just making sure that wasn't for those new
No, this was,
units that we received.
this
I
is,
just wasn't-
this is an
Okay.
annual, every year we do ACLS, and roughly half the department gets each
Okay,
year.
thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Tominello, a support by Mr. York to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next is the approval of the regular agenda. There was one item I asked to be added, item B2. We received a bill. We had anticipated the work would be under $2,000. It came in a little over, and so there is a need for that to be approved. So I'd ask that we.
What is the bill for?
What's that?
What is the bill for?
Well,
Always when we get there.
yeah, I
Okay.
can go through it. I mean, it's, yeah, no, that's fine. So I'm just asking to approve the agenda with the
Right.
addition of item B2.
I'm getting ahead of you.
Yeah, that's okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular agenda, adding item B2, which is approval of the bill for replacement hot water heater.
Support.
All right. Just got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Servil. Discussion. Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next is announcements. As we recover from the windstorm, please note that the next wood chipping collection will be the first full week of April. Please place butt ends of the branches and brush toward the street, neatly stacked, with branches not exceeding 2 to 3 inches in diameter or 12 feet in length. This service is provided to residents that maintain their own property and would exclude brush or branches placed out by a landscaper or forestry service contractor. The Parks and Recreation Committee are looking for volunteers. If you're interested in helping Parks and Rec throughout the season, please contact the supervisor's office and we'll get your information and get you in contact. 466-1445. Library has several events coming up, so make sure you check out their website, www.htlibrary.org, and then also for other township events. A lot of information on the township's website. There's a reliefing program that's going on, sponsored by the county, and some specials available to buy trees at a discount. There's a lot of different slides giving you information about upcoming events, so make sure you check the website, harrison-township.org. Any other announcements? Hearing none, we'll move forward in the agenda to item B1. Approval to purchase a 2017 Ford Police Interceptor Utility all-wheel drive from Signature Ford. Chief Lopez?
Good evening, board members. As the supervisor said, this purchase is for a new Ford Explorer to be replacing an existing fire department vehicle, which is a 2006 Ford Explorer that has roughly around 100,000 miles on it currently. And that vehicle, I believe we discussed repurposing the outgoing vehicle in another department in the township. This is part of our projected apparatus replacement plan. It was actually scheduled for replacement in 2016. We deferred that for a year for budgetary reasons and moved it to this year's budget. And it's also part of the realignment of the vehicles in conjunction with dispatch moving over to Comtech. So what we're going to be able to do with that change is essentially create this fire inspector's position that is going to be filled this year, which would add a position without adding a vehicle by repurposing our vehicles and restructuring how we use them. And that ties into the move with Comtech. We're currently very pickup truck based in terms of one person in a pickup truck following the ambulance on EMS calls. It's all built around one person getting back to the station to dispatch. When we move to Comtech, that's going to change that one person, that lone person at the station is no longer desirable. So the pickup truck model of following the ambulance is going away, which will allow us to repurpose those pickup trucks for command vehicles and such. So, and also for the fire inspector's vehicle. So this is all also part of that plan as well. So in pursuing this quote, we went through, as we do with all of these utility purchases, through the Macomb County bid contract, which for Ford vehicles is through Signature Ford. And when I talked with the salesperson, Bill Campbell there at Signature, I asked him for some ideas of local communities. He had mentioned that Clinton Township had just replaced their entire fleet of staff vehicles, and he gave me the quote for those vehicles with their specs, which I utilized, except for the fact that they purchased a custom red paint that I deleted. That was a $1,000 option that I didn't feel was necessary, so I eliminated that. Otherwise, this spec is in line with the exact vehicles that the Clinton Township Fire Department recently purchased. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do you have to send this out for signage on the sides?
Yeah, once it comes in, we'll send it out and have the decals and lights put on it.
You don't want that included in this bid, though?
The Ford dealership, it doesn't do that scope of work. We handle that locally over at Magic Graphics for the details and stuff. But the police interceptor package does allow for the the wiring to be in place for the lights. That's the reason for the police interceptor package you see in there. But the actual installation of the lights is done by a vendor once we get the vehicle.
If I may, just for the record, when we did our vehicles, as Chief Lopez is saying, the dealerships, of course, they offer to do that for you. They'll want to put the lights on, they would send it to get to wherever you want to put decals on, but then they put the markup on. And so this is a cost savings to the township by doing it the way that we're doing it. Same last year when we ordered the township vehicles, they're wired for the lights, switches are there and everything, but then we take them and have them put on by the township.
Any other questions?
Motion to purchase a 2017 Ford Police Interceptor Utility all-wheel drive from Signature Ford for a price of $28,415, with money to come from the fire department budget.
Support.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Tominello, a support by Mr. Batanti. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Board.
Next is item B2, this came in kind of, oh gosh, I don't know. The reason why I'm bringing it as an agenda item is a couple of things, so I'll give an explanation. Maybe the chief might even be better off, but, the hot water tank at, which station?
It's the Station 1 in Crocker.
Yep. So the tank blew on a Friday night and created kind of a bit of a flood. So the guys cleaned that up and they reached out to Arrow Heating and Cooling. They've consistently been the low bidder on just about every project that we've bid. And so they're located in the township, so they're typically the contractor that we call when we have an emergency project. So they did come out on a Saturday. There was an additional charge. I think they indicated a Saturday opening fee to go to the supply house because the supply house is typically not open. And the hot water tank for the station is a 75-gallon tank, so it's not a common size. So the cost of the materials added up to $1,335.81. There was 5.5 hours of labor between two individuals at $100 per hour. That was $1,100. So the total cost for that hot water tank on a Saturday service was $2,435.81. I don't think that when this was authorized, the chief indicated he didn't anticipate it would exceed the $2,000 threshold, number one. Number two, Arrow comes in, drops off the invoice in our office, so I said, okay, well, hang on, I wasn't aware of this. Reach out to the chief, yep, he wasn't aware that he didn't see the invoice because it was dropped off directly here. So I talked to him today, so I said, well, I'll bring it before the board and ask for approval at tonight's meeting. So that's what I got.
So you talk about a $2,000 threshold, what is that? Is that just something that's set as far as repairs?
Yep, good question. So per board policy, department heads they can spend up to $2,000 without board approval. So if this project would have cost $1,800, let's just say, we would have paid the invoice and said, well, obviously the chief authorized it and so forth. And I can understand the emergency nature in the sense that, it has to be replaced. I mean, those are living quarters and, you get guys who live there, shower there on certain, events and different things. The contract says the guy's gotta work out and prepare food there. There's a need for, the ability to wash gear, and we're obviously not gonna not replace a hot water tank. So we reach out to the vendor that's consistently the lowest bidder, but we were surprised by the amount, that it was over 2,000, so.
And what was the labor material breakdown? I'm sorry.
Yep, no problem. 75-gallon hot water tank includes a Saturday open fee and the drip pan and the venting and so forth, $1,335.81, and then 5.5 hours times two individuals, so a total of 11 hours of labor at $100 per hour for $1,100.
What's the total amount, Mr. Supervisor?
$2,435.81.
And I realize we use them because they've always been a low bidder in the past. And it's just an observation, if we think this is high, maybe in between now and some other time, we can do some investigation. But I'll make a motion that we approve the emergency expenditure of $2,435 to replace the hot water heater in
Station one.
Station 1.
All right. Motion by Mr.
Support.
Vatanti, support by Mr. York.
So normally, the other part of that policy is that normally, I get it was on a Saturday. but
Mr. Rickes-
Normally Ken, Adam, and I, they bring it to us and we
Okay,
give the go-ahead, sort of, the
Okay.
three of us speaking for the board. you
so
know.
that's a checks and balances.
That's-
Okay.
Right, so the
That's
policy
normally the
says,
check and balance, you
I
know.
think it's the finance director or two of the full-time, but there's a policy for it. But the point being that
I get it, yeah. no.
we weren't aware of it, you know, so I said to the chief, gee, well, I didn't hear about this, and he says, well, I didn't expect it to go over $2,000, and I wouldn't have thought so either, it's only a
I'm
couple
not
$100
making
over.
I'm just
No, no.
letting him know.
Yeah,
what
so that's the
I
policy.
appreciate that.
Under normal circumstances, like Dave or the chief, Ken and Adam and I or whatever, they come and
Yeah.
we'd approve it and.
Say,
Yeah,
say Dave
items that
loses
are-
an electric motor, and he says, you know what, the replacement motor for that lift station for our sewer system is $3,850. He'll come and show us, here's the, this is the supplier for that motor, this is the cost. Well, we don't have little choice but to, do it, we'll put it before the board, but we'll authorize that per that policy,
Okay.
so.
Understood. Thank you.
Is that a power vented heater or normally vented?
I couldn't tell you offhand, I would guess it's normally vented, but I don't know. The breakdown doesn't say.
I asked if it was PVC vented, and he said, no, he believes it's the conventional vent, so it'd be a conventional vent as opposed to a power vent.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll open up the floor for public comment.
William Bardell, 20-year resident. I think we need to start looking for another contractor. I think they got us by the short hairs on this one. The venting and the gas line and the venting virtually stay the same. You pop it in, you pop it out. I think they got you guys by you know what. Let's start looking for another contractor. These guys got you. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. I can certainly have a conversation with the contractor, but as I said, I can also vouch for the fact that I think the first time we utilized this contractor, we'd had two other folks look at the air conditioning at Station 1 and nobody could figure it out. He came out, solved the problem. Since then, I think any work that we've done, that we've gone through a competitive bid, I think the last time he was $1,000 lower on the rooftop, or $1,500 lower on a $5,800 job. So he has been pretty consistent. Every time we've bid a project, he's been consistently the low bidder.
Mr. Schuber, I was just going to add, I can't speak to this jobs, but I can say that in the past, we had a water heater issue at the Jefferson Station that we had another company come out that was actually the company that installed it originally and quoted us several $1,000s to replace it. And Arrow came out and said, well, this doesn't need to be replaced, and this is all you need, and it was fixed for under $300, and it's still working. So our experience with him has been very, very positive. I will say that the 11 hours labor, again, obviously that's the reason that Mr. Verkes didn't get the Saturday morning phone call from me, is I wasn't expecting the 11 hours labor and that much of a labor cost. That has caught me by surprise, but I've been nothing but satisfied with the work from Arrow on a number of occasions.
So
Yeah.
under,
It's
under-
really only 5.5 hours,
Yeah, it's just-
right,
Right.
for two
5.5
guys,
times.
right?
Right, right.
So,
under
Yeah.
normal circumstances,
Yeah.
if we had the time, we would bid a project out, right?
Yeah.
And so the low bidder would be forthcoming, right? So I have two things. One, normally when we can do that, we would know who the low bidder is. We've had good, we are comfortable with this vendor, does good work. So I
Absolutely.
think that means a lot. But I would also agree, it's something to be informed about, that's all.
Well,
I
and so-
don't think it causes me particular concern,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah, and I can tell you before I take this to accounting with a signature on it or an approval, I'll talk to the vendor as well to say, is there something unique
Yeah.
or special about this? But you know, I think when you have a relationship like we have with this vendor, and you have a vendor who supplies, you know, oftentimes this is emergency type stuff. You know, you say, we don't have any heat in this building, and, you know, whether I like it or not, we have but, you know, we have 2 stations. We have a senior center. You know, this campus alone has, you know, 3 different buildings, but the addition here is almost like a 4th building with its own separate HVAC system. So, you know, on any given month, you know, we end up making a call, and this is kind of one of these kind of vendors. And, like I say, I can inquire about this, but I couldn't say enough how many times we found the opposite to be true, that his prices have been very reasonable, and as the chief said, he'll come in and say, nope, you don't need this, this is all you need.
Great.
So,
The other thing you gotta keep in mind, it was a Saturday service, so it was a weekend service, and you're gonna pay premium.
it's the truth. I mean, that is a part of it, so. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Batanti with support by Mr. York to authorize the payment of $2,435.81 to Arrow Heating and Cooling for the replacement of a 75-gallon hot water tank at Station 1. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next.
Thank you.
Items C1, 2, and 3. Mr. Witt?
Yes, as the board has been discussing for some time now, the replacement of the pump station at Beechwood, the Beechwood Storm Station, and then also drain cleanouts for those tributary drains for the area. So tonight before us, we have the first couple steps in the process for creating a special assessment district to levy those costs against the benefiting properties. Before us, we have resolution number 1 and resolution number 2. Resolution number 1, the purpose of that is to establish the boundaries of the district. I will note that when we went, what you have in the board packet before you is missing about 7 parcels that will be added to correct that list there. There were a couple that got missed as we were fine tuning the lists. Just based on the drainage maps that the county had didn't reflect, you know, any subdivision that had been built after 1990. So you were trying to fill in some gaps and that kind of stuff in working with Public Works. So there was a couple that we found that we needed to add to it. There's about 7 of them that they'll be included on there. And that includes school parcels and township parcels. So resolution number 1 sets the bounds of the district. That's all it does. And then resolution number 2 directs my office to notice for a public hearing on this, for the first public hearing for the project, the public hearing of necessity. This directs us to notice it in the paper twice, at least 10 days prior to the hearing, and then also mail to each of these 1,600 and odd parcels a notice of that public hearing. Right now, we'd be looking at having that first public hearing on Monday, April 24th at our regular board meeting then. So that's the notice that'll be going out to everyone for that. So at this time, we're not saying who's being assessed what cost. That's not within the scope of these resolutions. That's later on in the process. As we move forward, we'll set those special assessment roles. And at that point, the board, as we have in the past, has the opportunity to make adjustments to those or decide which method we're going to be using to assess those costs against these people. When we send this out, that's individuals' opportunities to come forward. They have the right of, I can think of the right word, but they can, if they get 20% of the signatures, they can require us then to get over 50% of the project to sign on to move the project forward. So there is a method for individuals within the district to, you know, very clearly and have their voices heard. So that would be, and that's explained to them in the letter that goes out, that noticing process that goes out to them. So
That 50% would be based on acreage?
yeah.
Are you going to notify Department of Roads, the school district?
Anyone that has land within there, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, so.
I know we're gonna have a discussion on that, but we need to notice them at least.
And that, and that's the
are.
intent, so tonight, like, I know we have to have a different discussion on that, and I mean, we can have it twice, but we're gonna have that later, so this is just to
Correct.
notice the district and
And-
have we will decide at a later date exactly who's in, who's out, you know, so that's not.
So everybody's getting noticed.
Everyone's getting
so-
noticed, so no one will be harmed.
Right.
And incidentally left out, so then you're like, well, the cat's out of the bag, we can't go backwards, or we'd have to restart everything. But starting this special assessment process and establishing the district allows us to award the contract and begin that work and incur cost against the district, that can be levied. If we're under time constraints in awarding the bid for the project, so without creating that district, we can't award the bid. So we're trying to do everything in order and, make sure
Does-
everyone has their opportunities.
Will the notice contain, there's a grid here that shows
Costs,
the costs.
cost estimates?
The cost estimates of, just so that someone can be aware, and I don't know if that's the intent, Mr. Witt, that's great. So what are you thinking?
We
Will the
usually,
notice-
we usually include an estimate of the rough cost in there.
When you say the rough cost per parcel,
We'll give a cost per, we won't be broken down for individuals at this point because we haven't set the assessment role, but we would have a number per acre,
right,
you know, so that's the
So,
estimate. Cause like when we do roads, we say the estimated cost is, you know, the top number and then, or X amount per foot.
so in this case, we could say, since it's, I like the way it's been broken down in this letter, couldn't we, put a chart in, you know, on an acre, it'd be, this is the range, on a quarter acre, that's the range, just so when someone gets it, they can have a sense of importance. you know,
Absolutely.
What the meaningfulness is.
So
to
if we
them.
look at
It is a
resolution.
nice little chart.
If we look at resolution number 2, third from the last page, under where it says, it's after the grid, it'll say, please take notice. There's a line there that says, final assessed cost is based on actual construction, blah, blah, blah. I'll be happy to, when the board considers the resolution, I'm gonna say that that'll include the cost grid right there. So that way it's right in there clearly, so.
Yeah, and it might be indicated as a range.
Yeah, oh,
Well, you know, it'll
range
be
is great.
based on the way the letter's written.
Range is great.
you know,
I
we'll
just
do it
think it's
that way.
critical so that when somebody gets it, and if I get a letter like that without some range of cost, I don't know how important it is to me.
Right, absolutely.
Adam, would this letter include the actual acreage, like we got in the email? This
don't-
like .32 acres, for instance, would that be part of the letter that they get?
What
That
do
they're
you-
gonna be?
You mean if your lot is a quarter acre, your cost range is
It
this?
won't have individuals, it won't be specified at this point for each individual.
Right, so it's gonna say, if your lot is
Right.
quarter
Oh,
of an
okay.
acre,
So
then
there'll
your
be-
cost
I
range will
think
be
there's-
X to
I
Y.
think the way Dave wrote it, there's maybe 3 or 4 breakouts of a level, so we'll include those. and
Right.
Most people have an idea as to where they are approximately, and it'll give them a good estimate, so.
Okay.
That could be personally individualized.
Right, right. But I think it gives people a good,
A good ballpark.
a pretty good ballpark.
And should there be some acknowledgement in that notice, in addition to the cost, that the cost could be, that
I made it.
the cost may be amortized or maybe paid in?
I think that's a great,
You wanna look at it?
Yeah,
Okay.
right, could be something, yeah, I think that's another very good point. That,
So that someone looks at that and says, okay, well, you know, so my cost is $400, how is that going to be assessed to me? It can be paid at once, or
right,
it can be.
and usually we do that when we do the public hearing on the assessment roll.
Okay.
Like, we'll do a more detailed based on the actual number of parcels that we're including, and we'll get a little finer tooth, but we can,
The only reason why I ask is
Yeah.
because I think that this notice is gonna generate questions. And the
course.
more questions I can anticipate and answer,
A lot of questions.
Yeah, the-
1,700 people.
yeah, the less, you know, some people are gonna look at that and say, okay, well, what is this? I've got a
Right.
question, or whatever
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is.
and I think a difference is, if I'm getting assessed $400 and I can pay it over 4 or 5 years, might be different than someone thinking they would have to come up with that all at once.
Right,
absolutely.
yep, I think that would at least help to answer that question,
Agreed.
right, so.
Depending on whether or not the Department of Roads and the schools are in there, it's gonna be between $950 and $1,100 an acre.
Right.
I did some calculations.
It's 15% less if the it's 15%. is what it boils down to.
Well, he had 890 to 1,068.
And if you look at the difference, that someone would pay, if the roads
that's
and
close to-
the schools are in, it's 15% less per parcel. That's about what it is.
Correct.
If everybody's included, it comes out to, I think, based on the original numbers we were talking about with the cushion for drain cleanout, minus the money that's in escrow, it comes out to like $944 an acre.
Well, his calculations, it
It's
was
in here.
$888.94.
That's, if the property, if public property is included, 1 acre is 888. Without it, it's 1068. It's in,
Just a question on how some of the properties were divided, so condominiums, single-family homes is self-explanatory. Condominiums, are those
For the
per
purposes,
parcel?
for the purposes of the condos, they end up being one big parcel.
Okay.
So what we did was divided that cost equally based on the number of units that are there. So if there's, let's say they had, 100 acres with 200 units, then each of them is billed,
Okay,
a half acre worth of cost.
okay, that makes sense. So then what about apartments? How is that done? Is that done-
Apartments are one unit, so
One
they're a
unit.
commercial property. There's no,
Okay.
the individual renters aren't assessed.
Okay,
It's the
very good,
property
thank
owner.
you.
So as far as the condos, I was gonna ask this question, but, already hit on a little bit. Are you going to send each individual condo owner, cause they each have their own?
Correct.
Parcel,
They're each
right?
individual parcels.
Okay,
They'll
and
be
you just got- okay.
individually noticed.
Great.
And
Yeah.
that's based on the formula you use for the condominiums.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, we just see big blocks. That's why I looked at that too. I was like, well,
Right, and we were,
you know,
And then I guess, I'm probably gonna answer my own question, but as far as the apartments, they get one large assessment and then.
to the owner.
To the
they-
owner.
Right, to the owner,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep. No different than any other business that might be in there.
Okay.
That in essence is, for these purposes, that's kind of considered a business.
Sure,
Right,
okay.
even though it's multifamily housing.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or discussion?
so I will just say, I know we're gonna have a discussion later, so I'm not gonna go into it. I don't like these SADs, the board just lofting this on the citizens, and I said that down at the lake shore. And I'll just leave my comments at that, and we'll talk about everything else in another meeting. No sense in arguing it twice tonight, you know what I mean?
Sure. All right.
I'll make a motion to adopt foregoing resolution number 1 for Beechwood Storm Sewer Pump Station and Tributary Storm Drain SID project as presented.
Support.
All right, got a motion by Mr. Witt, a support by Mr. Tominello. We had a fair amount, but is there further discussion? Hearing none, we'll open up the floor for public comment.
William Bardell, 20-year resident. I just want to make a brief comment. Just a food for thought comment. I find it interesting that we're doing this SAD now, but we've been talking about these dirty drains, storm drains, not sanitary drains. There's a difference. Storm drains, approximately 2.5 years ago. And why did we do this before our election, 2016 election? Just find it a little bit interesting all of a sudden. We're spending all kinds of money now, and we're assessing. I mean, I know it needed to be done, but why didn't it get done 2.5 years ago when Mr. Servio was talking about it? I mean, I was here and Mr. Servio said these ditches gotta get cleaned and, I mean, gee, that was, 3 years ago. So I just find it a little bit interesting all of a sudden. We talk about being conservative, now we're spending all kinds of money now. And I still haven't heard anything about the sanitary sewer, how many leaks they found in the sanitary sewer. A PowerPoint up here where the cracks were, what pipes are gonna be replaced. I haven't heard anything about that, all the money on that. So I'd like to, while Mr. Axtell's here, report in on that, see how that job number's coming along. How many pipes, full schematic of the whole township, all the pipes, what each pipe's made out of, how many pipes gotta get replaced, how many pipes are busted in the sanitary sewer and leaking in water from the ground, therefore overloading the system, therefore more dumping into the lake. So I'd like to report on that. Just notice these things. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment, move back to board comment. Resident asked a question, why are we doing this now, but we've been talking about it for 2.5 years? Well, the discussion began with the application of a SAW grant. We were successful in getting that SAW grant probably about 2.5 years ago. That SAW grant paid for 90% of the engineering that was associated with this pump station. And that engineering was rather extensive because we looked at what a 1-year, 5-year, 10-year, 25-year rain event looked like, or more common than that is what happens when we have back-to-back rain events and we haven't dewatered from one event and we're only then chased and faced with another event. So that went into a lot of the work associated with determining just what size and what style of pumps we need. So that work has been going on. In addition to that, per the SAW grant, we do have to go through a competitive bid process. And of course, the letter provided by the engineer indicated that 9 firms actually bid on the work. And I believe those were received sometime in November. However, at the time, we realized that we had an upcoming change in our Public Works office and the potential for some partnership. That partnership turned out to be pretty good because as it stands right now, we've got a lot of the drains that we anticipated funding, some of the drain work in terms of cleaning the drains that we include in this funding is actually being done right now. As a matter of fact, a section of the Vanter de Buff was cleaned out last week. This board may recall that I think 2 weeks ago I'd asked for approval. I think the board approved up to $10,000. The low bidder to assist with a mini excavator to assist with the removal of that woody debris was $2,220 is what I recall. I received word today they finished the work earlier than they thought, and the cost for that clean out assistance was $1,570. So that's good news. So good news is we're making progress. We had, in essence, probably, I don't know, $6,000 worth of clean out work done for about $1,500 bucks. So we were able to utilize some labor from another agency. So in fact, I guess, maybe in this case, we'll hold on to see if we can get some help from Public Works, may have benefited us here. As far as the sanitary sewer report, I know that's not the agenda item, but to address the resident's question, is it DVM Utilities?
Yes.
You'll see, anybody who's paying attention around town, you'll see a lot of trucks going around. At first, I was kind of curious when I saw it. I didn't even think of it. And, there's kind of this work van just sneaking down the street and, but the work is ongoing. By no means are they prepared or did they indicate in any way that they would have a report at this time. They began first, second week of February, and we're dealing with 89 miles?
Yes.
So there's a lot of camera, there's a lot of data to be collected. They're in the process in the field as we speak. So for those residents who may have seen a couple of white work trucks out, DVM Utilities, they're in the process of collecting that data to see, depth, condition, materials, and I think already they found some areas that we weren't aware of that are areas of concern.
So to touch on a couple things, as you mentioned, the Beechwood Storm, the engineering, the SAW grant, it all ties together. But one of the reasons that obviously there is a procedure that this takes so long, it wasn't just the Beechwood Storm Station that we were engineering with the SAW grant. As you recall, the Bay Haven Sewer Lift Station was also part of that. We had to work very diligently and strategically to get things engineered, the projects moving, and then move to the next one so that this worked. Bay Haven Station is done, complete, the river crossing, new river crossing, everything is done as far as that one goes. That one was completed, paid out, and all those documents are there. As we stated, with the February Cameron, we've been very lucky with the weather this winter. We've had a mild winter. I mean, thank goodness, and it's worked very well. They have found some issues that my guys have gone out and cleaned with the Vactor, our Vactor, and there will be lists, disc tapes, or VDDs or DVDs, discs showing the problems, our trouble areas, infiltration. That all has to be assessed and prioritized as to how, when, where we're gonna go about this, who's going to do it. Are there certain things that our field personnel can handle? Are there things that I'm gonna have to come to you for and say, we need a contractor to do this? there's nothing to hide here. This is all public information. I welcome this more than anyone. I'll be here 19 years in August, and I would love to know what my whole system is. I mean, as you go through the field, you open things up, you see things, and you start to understand, certain areas are this. You look at prints. Some of our prints, they're from the 40s. I mean, this is welcome information. So I assure you that when it's done, I will welcome you to the office. You can come in and take a look. We'll show you what we have, and you're gonna see us or contractors out there making these necessary repairs and/or improvements to our system. This is exactly the reason we're doing this is, I mean, I don't like getting my butts handed to me by the auditor every year, you purchase the water and yes, there's infiltration more going into the sanitary. I want it fixed more than anybody. I'm the one that has to answer for it. So, but it's a long, lengthy process. You could have started, and run into more problems. It could have been longer down the road. They put a time limit on this SAW grant, and there are no extensions, none. So our back's against the wall, and we're pushing hard, and we will get there. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. We're in much better shape right now than we were when I brought it forward, because the weather's been mild, and we're moving. They're really kicking it out. So we're happy with the way things are going.
Sure, and then we also met with the firm that will do the, asset management portion of this work. So one component in this is, okay, well, what is the current condition? But then there's also another factor in there to say, okay, well, as Dave mentioned, what priority do things need to be done? What are those costs, forecast over time? Now, if we take a look at those costs, how does that compare to your rate, and to do a full rate study, which is part of the requirement for the SAW grants. We've already also began the process of working with that firm and supplying them with the information that they need to be able to do that portion. But that isn't ultimately the agenda item we had, but in the interest of addressing the residents' request.
As long as we're talking about it, if I could ask Dave a question or two.
We're a little off on, it's not really germane at this point to
Yeah,
the
but-
agenda item.
Yeah. What do you got?
Well, I was just gonna ask him, in addition to finding defects in the sanitary system, is it also going to correct errors in mapping, so you know exactly where the sewers are, and also exactly where the taps are?
Absolutely. The procedure is, so they started out, and we will have GIS location of every sanitary structure, meaning manhole,
This is their
inspection
parcel.
manhole.
Right, because
But
the
as you
apartments
said,
go to the other
going
side.
televising through, the cameras do every lead they come through, they do a 360 and show us that lead. So we will have lead locations, so we look from each manhole, so on and so forth. We have paper records of a lot of that, and obviously, as you know, working in the township, there are times where there were mistakes made, it's human error, and that's not to say that they might not push the wrong button when they put the coordinates in, but this will be 99% accurate and give us so much more information than we have currently. And the other thing I wanted to state, while we're here on camera talking about this, is Supervisor Burkett said, and I stated, I will be here 19 years in August, and I've had more cooperation with the Public Works Office since Commissioner Miller took over than I have in all the time I've been here. I've been out in the field personally with Mr. Forlini, looking at the drains and the culverts, the cross pipes, the roads, and he was telling me what they're going to do, and when he said they're gonna do it, they're out there doing it. We've never had that cooperation, never had the conversations that I have had with them. I mean, it's such a positive, upbeat attitude now, it's unbelievable. The residents are gonna be very pleased as we move forward.
And one final thing, once you know what needs to be done, there's going to be an agenda item with the report, correct?
Yes, we'll come back and give I'm not saying I'm gonna go through the house, specific detail, step by step, but I will come back and say, okay, here we found a major infiltration issue, or this was one major issue, and this is our procedure, what we're gonna do. There's gonna be cleaning that needs to be done, deep cleaning, which we're finding out now, which I will be coming to the board for a very this year for a new Vector, which will have the equipment to do this. But there's gonna be deep cleaning that needs to be done. The identification was a big part of it, the deep cleaning, and then the repairs, and depending on what type of material it is, how deep it is, as to whether I can do it, or I'm coming to you again and asking for, a contractor to be able to do this, and it goes out to bid. But it's all 100% necessary, and it's a blessing. It really will be a blessing for the township.
Yeah, so I think it's likely that when that time comes, we'll probably, if there's a large amount of information we need to go over, we'll probably have some sort of a workshop where
Certainly.
we, review that, you know, because
Then we could.
this is a lot of information.
No, I think that that's
right?
exactly what we should do. It's such a big project, and a lot of information to be processed. The workshop seems it would be entirely in order.
Yep,
And then we could outline it and maybe, you know, put some literature together for residents and or the website, so that then sort of condense it a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
Cause it is a lot, like you said, 89 miles of sewer pipe is a lot of pipe, and there's gonna be a lot of camera video, so.
so, I know we're a little bit off topic there, but is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Tominello to adopt Resolution 1. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Batkins?
Yes.
Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Servil?
Yes.
Mr. York?
No.
Mr. Verkast?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Then our next item is item C2.
Again, this is the one that sets the public hearing. We're looking at our second meeting in April, which is the 24th. I'd make a motion to adopt resolution number 2 for the Beechwood Storm Sewer Pump Station and Tributary Storm Drain SAD project with the changes of adding the pricing information into the notice there.
And maybe financing.
Yeah, it's pricing.
Yeah, okay. All right, is there support?
Support.
Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Okay. All
You're
right.
also adding Department of Roads and schools, what have you.
Yeah.
They're in there, right? That's part of the notice process, yep.
Okay.
And we did talk about really both subjects, I think pretty lengthy when we considered item C1. Item C2 is an extension of that, so if there is discussion, but I think it seems like we kind of already covered it. So if there's no discussion, seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Batanti?
Yes.
Mr. Batkins?
Yes.
Mr. Servil?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. York?
No.
Mr. Verkast?
Yes. All right, good. Then, last but not least, item C3. Okay, well.
Or Dave?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So the letter that was provided by Wade Trim last week kind of gave a bit of the background of the project. Some of the board members here may recall the workshop that we had about this, where we looked at, we looked at literally how much, and when I say workshop, I should say, let me preface that by saying, before we kicked off the engineering for this, at least 2 years ago, I don't know, maybe it was longer, we had a workshop where we looked at, what are we paying in an annual price per year for pumps that we've put in place, just, patchwork systems, overtime, fuel, so on and so forth, and we looked at what the cost has been to, for lack of a better word, avoid doing the work at the Beechwood pump station. And I think at that time we concluded we couldn't afford to not update the pump station. But that's not necessarily every board member that's here might have been here for that workshop. Excuse me. We got the SAW grant, we approved the engineering, moved forward with the design of the whole project. Looked at, kind of a hydrologic study for the whole area. Came back with the design, bid specs, sent it out for estimates. November 10th, the bids were received and read. The low bidder was Body Construction. We received all positive references. Body was also the contractor that did the bike path along North River Road last fall, and that went pretty well. Bids varied from $708,000 to $982,000, so pretty big variance. But Body was the lowest bidder, and their condition, their, guess you'd say their references and analysis seems to be good, and they were fair in dealing with change order pricing and did quality work. That was the references that we found. So at this point, we talked about how we'd pay for it. The SAW grant requires that in order for us to get the reimbursement for the engineering, we actually have to kick the work off. So we have asked the contractor to extend their bid price for a 150-day period, which is a few more weeks. But the sooner that we get this started, the sooner this project is complete. And regardless of how we pay for it, in the end, we are gonna pay for it, the township, and then we'll, at this point, it appears we're working towards spreading that cost amongst the drainage district. That's a future conversation, but at this point, we're looking to award this bid to Body Construction, and I believe it would be appropriate to include a 10% contingency with that award.
I'll make a motion to award the bid for the Beechwood Storm Water Pump Station replacement to Body Construction at a cost of $708,294 with a 10% contingency.
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Witt, support by Mr. Tominello. Discussion, board.
I have a question for Mr. Huth. Mr. Huth, it's my opinion that there's a bridge on the bike path that adds up by this contractor's bid. I went through it with Mr. Newmer. It's over $96,000 of work to remove that bridge and put the extension of the box culvert and do whatever other work there is there. I don't believe it should be part of the SAD. That bike path is a township-owned parcel, and I believe that it should be separated. So my question is, I know that's not something to debate today, but if we let this out after we've already done this special assessment district, can we remove that portion of it from the SAD later on?
Right, and the answer is, yes. What you're doing now tonight, you are agreeing that the work's gonna be done.
Oh, yes.
The contractor's gonna be doing it. If at some point later, there's a determination by the board that something should come out of the district, for whatever reason, and I understand you're not debating that issue now, you can make an adjustment then.
Well, just to be clear, I've been told for years that that bridge is unsafe. You can't drive a vehicle over it because it's a wood bridge, even if it were safe. So I'm fully in concurrence with the project. It's just a matter of, I don't believe that part should be part of the SAD. If there were no bike path there would be no need for that $96,000 worth of work. So we can discuss that at a later time. I just wanted to make sure we're not boxing ourselves in at this time.
Yep. And I think it is worth noting, and I think the engineer may have shared this with you, just the line item, a lump sum line item to remove the pedestrian bridge and abutments for Body was a $55,000 quote. Following them, the number two bidder had $8,696 for that. Telto had $4,000. The next one was $5,000, $4,500, $12,500, $6,700. It is completely reasonable to think that that $55,000 number is probably a catch-all for a number of other components. So the total cost of that really probably isn't $96,000, but that's the way it's been bid by the low
Well, I
bidder.
understand that, Mr. Verkest, but if you look at the bids, they're all over the board on all of the items. We can't go by anything other than the low bidder's itemized list.
Well, no, we can. I'm
We
not
have the
telling.
discussion,
Hold
debate
on.
later.
Yeah.
Hold on. All I'm doing is you'd mentioned a number of 96,000. By anyone's estimate, and including the engineer's estimate, that probably isn't reflective of the total amount of work. But the key here is whether or not, can it be included in this and kicked off? Yes. Can we as a township agree to take some amount from the general fund to pay for that? Absolutely. And thereby reduce, in essence, the amount that goes to the special assessment.
And if this bidder eventually, when we get to that point, wants to say, well, that was a catch-all, I should have had divided that up in 6 different categories and added to different phases, then I'm okay with that too.
Sure.
It's still
Well-
a substantial amount of money. The box culvert alone is over $28,000.
Sure, and we don't need a contractor to say that in order for us to, we can agree to put in more than $96,000. We can agree to put in less than $96,000, or we can agree to pay all of it or none of it. All I was just merely pointing out was that I know that the engineer shared with you that $96,000 is probably not an accurate estimate for that scope of work, but it is, by all measures, a substantial sum, probably at least $70,000 at a bare minimum. So I think it's worth noting, that's all.
So I'll just say, I agree with the project. I don't like the funding mechanism at this point at all.
Do you have a proposal for another funding mechanism?
Well, you can just pay it out of the general fund. You certainly can do that, but that's for debate later.
And if we're
You know?
gonna, if we're gonna make that comment on the record, I would say that I would be strictly opposed to that. We have about $2.5 million in the general fund. The notion of taking a third of that out for one project, what do we do the next time there's a project such as this? That would leave us 2 more projects, and then we would have no money in the general fund, if we're talking about it now, just my opinion.
Well, if we wanna talk about it, we gave $350,000 of the general fund to the fire department. That could have been 300, I'm just.
No,
I'm
we
just-
didn't.
I'm just
That's not a
pointing- I'm
true
just
number.
pointing out-
350 is not even a
Well, I'm-
reasonable number to say.
Adam, I'm not arguing, I'm just.
But you're saying
And we
false
didn't give
numbers,
it.
saying,
We
you're
didn't.
saying
We
by
didn't
example
give
this,
350.
and that didn't even happen.
Or we can have
We
it
can
at a
have
later
the
date.
debate later, I was
Right,
really trying not to
but-
have this debate tonight.
Right,
Since
but the
you
way
brought
to
it up-
avoid that debate is not to snipe and just bring up
I
random
didn't-
comments and throw numbers out there and say, this is what I
made a
think.
comment that I disagree with the way we're funding it,
I
that I
understand.
agree with the project, and then I get pounded.
No,
That's
nobody's
all that I
pounding
said,
you.
I wasn't
It's not
trying to-
pounding, it's just that
to
if you
get a
bring,
debate.
you
I
bring up
wasn't-
the general fund,
I
I'm
honestly
giving
was-
my opinion on the
That's
general
fine.
fund.
But we're gonna have that debate,
Well,
Of
I'm
course.
sure, at a later time.
Correct, so let's
right?
not have
So
it any
that's
further.
why I-
In defense of Mr. York, not that I agree with him.
But see, what we're doing now is we're just debating it
No,
further
I just want to
here.
make one comment and we'll
Okay.
move on.
All right, what if
You
everybody
did
else wants
ask
to make
Mr.
one more
York
comment?
if there was an alternative, and he gave you an answer.
What he said was, he said, there are other ways this can be funded. In order for me to understand that, he made that statement. I'd like to know what those other ways are. I
general
merely
fund.
asked that question.
I know, and he
That's-
merely answered, so I think we should move on.
Absolutely.
And you can finance it, there's all sorts of things, you can float bonds, you know, spread it over 20 years. There are other funding mechanisms.
Okay. All right. Okay, any other discussion, board? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we have a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Tominello to award the Beechwood Pump Station and related work to Body Construction at amount of $708,294 with a 10% contingency.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mr. Witt?
Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Backens?
Yes.
Mr. Batanti? Mr. Servil?
Yes,
Mr. York?
No.
Mr. Verkest?
Yes. All right, thank you, board. Next on the agenda, item D1. Mr. Witt.
Yes, board. We had a election commission meeting, in February, and our election commission approved relocating the boundaries of several of our precincts. Precincts 4, and precinct 6 will be modified. We're moving a portion of 4 into 3 and a portion of 6 into precinct 10. These changes will rebalance the voter totals within our precincts, and it make sure that if we had any growth in a precinct, that we're well below the 2,999 voter limit. During November, which was one of the busier election days that you're ever going to see, we had times where, especially in precincts 3 and 4, there'd be people waiting for precinct 4, and they'd look over at 3 and say, how come there's nobody in that line? I want to go vote over there. So essentially what we're doing is moving some people over so that they will vote over
Now
there.
people in what's 3 can wait in line too.
Yeah, it's equally lined.
But no,
Well,
I'm- I'm
just,
teasing.
no, for an example, in precinct 4, there's 2,676 people currently, compared to 1,477 in 3. After this move, we're moving 564 voters over, so 3 will have 2,041 and 4 would have 2,112.
So we're just doing a balance.
Much more balancing.
In the end, it's better service to the
Yeah,
residents,
and
ultimately.
in 3 and 4, fortunately, they're not moving voting locations. They're gonna continue to vote at Lobostal. With 6 and 10, there is a change in voting locations for those individuals, but we do mail out notifications to anyone that's affected, regardless of whether or not their polling location changes. So we'll have that mailing go out to people. It'll tell them of their new voting location. We also spoke with the election commission about the next time we actually have an election, to reach out to those people again, because just because I sent it out this year and meet the legal requirements, we can provide a little better customer service by mailing it out again, closer to the next election that we're going to have, so they don't get caught off guard again.
So I make a motion to designate streets within precinct 4 to precinct 3, and streets within precinct 6 to precinct 10 to allow precincts to remain below the maximum 2,999 voters.
support.
Is that, which one? Okay, all right, Mr. Servil. Sorry about that. All right, we got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Servil. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next, item D2, Mr. Witt.
Yes, at our last board meeting, we approved to move forward with the Granicus software for agenda creation and minute making. As I've been working with the company towards implementation, it came up that it would be more cost effective to add the live meeting streaming now instead of waiting. What we end up doing is, at this point, we'd be buying the correct server side item for us now, as opposed to investing in something and then having to upgrade it later to allow those live streaming. And the training and setup cost will be built into a one-time training and setup as opposed to having to pay it twice. So you're gonna be saving on the front end for doing that. And speaking with Mr. York, there's some money available for hardware for cable purposes. We get from our cable franchise revenue. The setup cost is $36.95, which includes the programming, shipping, and training on the server. It's $300 per month moving forward for the live streaming. This will allow our board meetings to be more transparent and open to people that maybe are on UVerse and currently can't get the meetings live, or they're cord cutters like me and don't have cable TV. So they'd be able to watch it on a live device, Dish Network or any of those products. So they'd be able to watch them live. And also, in speaking with the deputy supervisor, right now we put the meetings online through YouTube. At a later point, usually about a week later, they'll get up there when he gets the DVD, and then it actually takes him an entire day to upload it. You know, he runs his computer overnight to get the video up online, depending on how long we're up here talking. So it ends up taking him some time to get that set up right. So we'd be able to have those right on our website, available to people without any additional steps. So,
Could watch around the world live.
well, yeah.
I
Yeah,
think-
so the new board members, maybe you know this or not, but I'll just say this, we get, on the WOW franchise fees, we get 0.5% of those fees we have to use for hardware. So, the last time we upgraded the hardware was 11 years ago, and I'm gonna be bringing a proposal with some new cameras and things to go full digital, because we have about $30,000 of dollars that we can only use for the cable room. It's designated for that, and, we have to use it for that, just.
And that's part of the increased cost on this is, instead of having an analog server for the broadcast, it's a digital, which was, is more expensive through them, but it'll meet our hardware needs going forward.
That was an increase of $1,195 then, wasn't it? 'Cause I think the number before was 2,500.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that sounds about right.
And if any board member wants to see what the system does, if you go to, I've been looking at Granicus for years, and if you go to Shelby Township's website, it's really slick. It'll have the, like, agenda on the left, and you just click on it, and it'll show that part of the meeting.
It fast forwards or jumps to
Yeah,
that
it
segment.
just
of the
jumps
meeting.
right to that
Does
section.
it
of
create
the
a
meeting.
history as well? I mean, like
Yeah.
previous meetings?
Correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it's
And it's
available.
really slick. You
Well-
just click on and it brings up the video.
When we hired AAS for our assessing services, they had gone to a Fraser meeting previously to that, and I was able to click right on their meeting and watch their presentation and their questions on it, really quickly. So I went and used their, I think they use Granicus, and it's this, it's just easy to access that information.
That's a really slick interface. So if you go to Shelby Township's website, you can look at it. It's
So
a really neat system.
point of clarification, that $300 is, what does that get us?
It's any maintenance to the server, any patches, updates, anything like that. They'll be responsible for all the maintenance on the server, not SYO. And then that's $200 of that cost, and then there's $100 for the actual live streaming that covers.
That's why I was asking, because
Yeah.
I seem to remember $100 was the
Yeah.
number. Okay.
But it's $200 for that server support, and it's basically IT support from them.
Motion to approve adding live streaming services through Granicus at a one-time cost of $36.95 plus $300 per month
Support.
for ongoing maintenance.
And a motion by Mr. Tominello, with support by Mr. Servil. We discussed it a little bit there, but is there any further discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries. Board, next on our agenda, item E1, At our February 27th meeting, just 2 weeks ago, we approved a 50-cent per hour raise for most of our part-time employees. The list did not include the cable operator position. A review from the minutes from the April 13th, 2015 regular board meeting shows that the cable operator position received the same raise as the other positions at the last time it was addressed. And really what happened was, I can tell you that what I did is, and I think this is probably not the craziest thing out there, but you tend to copy and paste when you come to an agenda item, so I looked up what I did for the April 13th thing, and just copied and added it on. But in fact, when we talked about it April of 2015, that my error was pointed out, so we actually passed a motion to add the cable operator to that list, and it is in the policies, but since I used my old agenda item, it wasn't on there, so that was my mistake, and I appreciate the resident pointing that out. 2 weeks ago, I told you I'd bring it forward, so I'm proposing that we pass on that same increase to our cable operators.
So moved.
Support.
Not that
Motion
it
by-
matters, Ken, but you kept on saying April. You mean February meeting?
Nope, April of 2015.
Oh, well, it just brought up like the last meeting. right?
No, what I'm saying is back in April of 2015, that was the last time that I'd proposed to this board
Okay.
that we give a raise to our part-time employees.
You're talking about also adding the cable operators to the list.
But we did in April of 15, but
Oh, you
since,
did.
but it wasn't a part of my motion. During the meeting, someone said, hey, you forgot the cable operator. So someone made the motion to add that on, but out of habit, I pulled up my old agenda item, hey, change the date, redrew this, plug in the numbers, and I updated an old obsolete
So
item.
when was the rest of the people, when was that effective? Immediately?
It was the last pay period, so it'd have been Wednesday of last week.
Right,
So are you gonna backdate the cable operators?
that's up for this board. I just did the same thing, effective next pay period. If this board believes it should be backdated to,
I feel like it should be at least effective today.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
today's
could be
meeting. If it was
effective
just
today.
last Wednesday.
I'll make that part of the motion.
okay, all right, so effective today?
Yeah.
All right.
So make 50 cents more today, or dollar.
Effective 3/13/17. Continued support, Mr. York.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right,
course.
discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board, and thank you, Wally.
You're rich.
All right, next is public comment. We welcome residents to talk about anything they wish, but we ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes in length.
William Bardell, 20-year resident. I want to just talk a little bit about, for the residents and for any board members that don't know what the difference is between sanitary sewer and storm sewers. Just for your information, you might know, you might not know, residents may know, they may not know. Your sanitary sewer is the sewer for your toilet, your kitchen sink, your washer and dryer, your slop sinks, and your drains in your basement. Your storm sewer is for your sub pump and your drainage tile around your home. Now, what happens is, in some of your older homes, they don't have the sub pump, or depending on your water level, they just have the drainage tile. The drainage tile is a type of tile that's got pea gravel inside of it, lets the water through, and shoots it through to your storm ditch or your storm drain. Or, if you have a sub pump, that goes out to your back 40 or your lawn. This is for your storm drain. That goes to out to the middle of your lawn into a pop-up, and it seeps out. Or it goes into a seepage pipe that heads toward your ditch, if you have a ditch in front of your house. Or if you're in a new subdivision, it goes to a storm sewer that's in front of your house. A lot of times what happens is, in our sanitary sewers, as the pipes are 60 years old, they get breaks in them. And when we get a lot of rain, if there's any breaks in that sanitary sewer, that's your toilet, your washer and dryer, and dishwasher, well, groundwater gets in that. And what happens is that overloads the system, and when the pipe gets more than approximately half full, it goes over a wall and goes into a retention basin. Because that pipe cannot have too much pressure in it, or it goes over a little dam and goes into a retention basin, because that pressure of that pipe is too much. And then it goes to a retention basin. Needless to say, when it goes to that retention basin, there's no actual live streaming video of that water getting treated or partially treated in that retention basin. That's why we have 40 to 60 beach closings, because of E. coli. Now what happens is, in a lot of your storm sewers is, people, instead of that storm, the sub pump, when that line gets backed up, instead of snaking that out every 10 years, people illegally tie that into their sanitary sewer. So you're actually processing groundwater down at Detroit. So you're sending it down in Detroit. So combined with all the broken pipe we have in the ground from our sanitary sewers, combined with people illegally hooking up their sub pumps, you got a fiasco. The system gets overloaded. So I was asking this board if there's somehow, with the new meters that we have, some legal way that we can inspect and make sure everybody is in compliance. Once you snake out that line for your sub pump, it's good for 10 years. Just snake it out, or you run a new line, you'll see some houses, they'll see that line running all the way to the ditch. Well, usually that's not their toilet, obviously, but I mean, most of the time that's gonna be their sub pump, and they're going into the ditch. And that's your storm ditch, which is okay. Well, what's been happening is, when we get these heavy rains, our friends in the city of Warren dumped on March 1st to March 4th, they dumped into the Red Run drain, which goes to the Clinton River, that goes to Lake St. Clair. Our friends in Warren dumped 40.32 million gallons of sewage in our lake. Our friends at Chapton, at the 9 Mile retention basin, dumped 4.8 million gallons of sewage in our lake. Our friends at the Martin retention basin on 3-1 also dumped 36.4 million gallons of sewage into our lake. 12 towns dumped, a couple more minutes if I could, sir. I appreciate it. 12 towns dumped on 3-1 239.9 million gallons of sewage into our lake. It's going to be a happy day when we get our ducks in order and fix up our leaky sanitary sewer system, so we can go to these people that are dumping and tell them, look, we got our ducks in line, and you guys can make a motion to go after these people. Square biz. Go after these people when our system's tight. Square business. So I ask everyone to also please check out Save Lake St. Clair on Facebook. The other one thing I just want to touch on real quick, I find it interesting that the awarded contract from Candace Miller, I know they've been cooperating with us, we hear, but I'm just wondering why it took 3 days to get it out to who got awarded the contract. Just saying, why it wouldn't come out right away, who got the contract. Dave's Excavating got the contract, if anybody would like to know.
Dan's excavating?
Yeah, Dan's Excavating. So just would like to know why, when they decided who got awarded the contract, Candace Miller didn't let everybody know right away, since, we hear a lot about transparency. So thanks a lot, board members and residents. Have a wonderful, peaceful evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment. Is there any board comment?
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. Excellent presentation, Mr. Bardell. If I might, I want to correct one thing you did say, though. The drains in the floor of a basement are not connected to the sanitary. There may be some, but our code for years and years has not allowed that.
Right.
But you do bring up a good idea, and I think that maybe as part of our cross-connection backflow preventer, we could have them look and see if the septic tank, or sump pump is actually pumping into sewer, sanitary sewer somewhere.
Sure.
I don't know that we can do it all the time, but when we're in there, we do have a right to look at some other things. It might be something to look at.
Sure. There's data that we've received from Public Works that would suggest that there's probably some other areas, and so let's just say this. Based on the data that Public Works has, if we decided that we want to pursue potential violators of illegal connections to the sanitary sewer, there's some other low-hanging fruit that would probably yield much greater results. That isn't to say that we couldn't do that, but if we want to pursue that path, there's probably another place to spend less time and substantially greater violations.
You're more than likely gonna have to get access to people's homes.
Right, but there's
Look, and that becomes a
Well, you
big
do have
issue.
access, our current ordinance says that once a year is what it says, that you're gonna do the cross-connection backflow preventer inspection, and that means access to the home.
yeah.
If you
It's a-
recall, we had a
fine line.
letter,
Yeah,
we had a
it's-
letter
there's
from
there's a
the
whole,
resident.
yeah, there's a whole different conversation about it, but
Yeah, I agree. Maybe it's not feasible, I don't know, but it's a point that should be taken. And we do have a subdivision also, my understanding is, that for whatever reason, all of their stormwater goes into the sanitary.
right, and we did a study on that, and the reality was,
Yeah,
the
from the
dry and
pros-
wet weather flows weren't radically different. I mean, we pursued that ourselves, because we wanted to know what that condition was, so we hired Wade Trim to see that. The point being that we could spend a substantial sum of money, whether we did it or the homeowners did it, and we wouldn't really change much in the way of, it isn't all their stormwater, but it's their foundation, it's their, their basement, drain tile.
Drain tiles?
Right.
You know, water sewer sometimes has trouble just getting into someone's house to put in a new, water meter.
Yeah.
Let alone if you're gonna say, oh, I'm gonna check and see if you have an illegal sump pump connection, I can see that.
Yeah, but there are
I
some
mean,
things we can do. We can have
yeah,
a conversation in the future about that.
Mr. Supervisor, I have I'm sorry,
Sure.
No, go ahead.
a question and a comment. I read the other day, a comment regarding the F-35 deployment. I read the other day that I had heard that there were 5 or 6 bases being considered, then I read that it was now down to 2.
Nope, what they're saying, so I can clarify that. The Air Force will place an F-35 fighter squadron at 2 bases. There are 5 bases that they're considering. So if you do the straight number, you'd say, well, that means you have a 40% chance, if you want to look at it that way. So 2 of those 5 will receive an F-35 fighter
was a
squadron.
little
Now, there are more than just those 2.
Right.
There have been already some decisions made for the placement of F-35 fighter squadrons, but they're looking to place 2 more, and they're considering 5 bases.
It was a little unclear then in the newspaper the other day.
Well,
So
and
it's-
sometimes, there's a lot of information that comes out of those press conferences, so.
Okay, so we're 2, there'll be 2, and there are 5 under consideration. The only question I would ask for some future consideration is there some way that we support the base? I mean,
Absolutely.
we've done that for years, and the base command recognizes that, I'm sure. But
Absolutely.
is there something we can do to make that more publicly noticed?
Sure.
Mr. Witt had an idea about just putting a sign out. Only point being is I'd like us to give it some thought, just to show that evidence of that. There'll be people coming in, I believe, in the next couple of months for further evaluation. And if there was some way we could think of to demonstrate that support, it's there already. I'm not saying we have to create it, but just to demonstrate it. Food for thought.
Yep.
And the-
Well, we do participate in the Chamber's military affairs. They have a committee. What we found was that, and I shouldn't say we found, but folks at the county level and working with the base we understand now that in some places in the country, so let me back up. Selfridge Air Base is a big contributor to our regional economy, right? In some other places in our nation, that might be the only game in town. We're fortunate in southeastern Michigan that we have large manufacturers. We have a lot of other things that compete for our attention. TACOM is a significant contributor to our local economy. But because of that, there are other parts of our country that do a much better job of promoting and supporting their bases.
I'm sure.
Because that's the only game there is. So the chamber, Grace Shore and her group have taken a big lead in working through that, to try to coordinate that effort so that we can respond, from Lansing all the way down to locally. Governor has appointed the General Vadnais, but there's things that the military folks can't do. They can't promote themselves. It's kind of like a chain of command thing. So there's a civilian effort to try to do that, and we are involved in that. But you bring up a good question. I mean, Wisconsin's got cheese heads. Maybe we can get F-35 hats and wear them to a meeting or something.
Or it sounds like you're certainly involved, and I appreciate that. I'm just wondering if there's anything, anything that we could do that might lend a little bit of
There is-
visible support.
There is one small thing we've done in the past. What I mean is, this board we've passed resolutions opposing the closing of that base in the past. We could vote on a resolution and approve a resolution that we're in
In
favor
support
of, we're in favor of that base staying there forever, if that's what we want to do.
Well, I mean, there's another idea. So Mr. Wood had an idea, Mr. Servley has an idea. I'm just talking about things like that just, you don't know what's gonna, that when it's a close decision, what might help push it in our favor.
May I speak for 1 second?
We can talk about it after the meeting.
Okay. I just wanna let residents know you can go online and sign petitions for the F.
Yes.
Is Chesterfield also on board with this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's a regional thing. The county is, it would have a huge financial impact. Let me just say two things. The addition of that fighter squadron would have a positive impact and likely a lasting impact on our local economy. The loss of a fighter platform at Selfridge would also have a significant impact, but a negative impact on our economy. And again,
Without it, there's no mission.
Right.
Eventually, the base will close.
Correct. There are thousands of people employed at Selfridge, but they don't live there. They live in our neighborhoods. Their kids go to school with our kids, and they're the folks that support, our whole local economy, from any little store to, folks that you sit next to at church, whatever it is. And so
And
the loss of those thousands of people would have a big impact regionally.
Which is why I think any little thing we can do, so that we can't look back at that and said, maybe we should have done something else.
Right.
That's all. Thank you.
I got a couple things,
Okay.
Mr. Supervisor. So Saturday, we held bowling day. Numbers were down. We had 16 bowlers, it's a little bit less than half of what they had last time. Total Sports and Mark Sinkowski, wanted to thank both of them for one, hosting, and for Mark's coordination of that. And just a reminder that June 10th, we've got our fishing derby coming up. That we'll be getting information as that becomes available. We just want to put it out there. It's usually a pretty big turnout, so that'll be June 10th. Last thing not related to Parks and Rec is I am in the SAD district, proposed district, if you will, and I look forward to board members bringing other means and methods pertaining to this to the next board meeting.
Well, I think as it is, at least 4 of us are in that district,
Yeah.
so.
But I would like to see if there's are better ideas or something that different options. I would absolutely like to see those, not just talked about.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
It's been moved and supported to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, board.
Go online.